Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. I'm here at the Manuka terminal. I just got a cup of ice. I was filling up my cup with nectar of the gods here. Um, so had a load that I picked up. So I came off of home time on Monday. Today's Friday, by the way. Came off of home time on Monday. This was just kind of weird because I'm going to talk about home time in a second. But so I got a load out of Sealands Grove, PA. Just a short one. Went over to Frederick, Maryland, and then then I deadheaded over to Vineland, New Jersey. Picked up a load of produce going to Auburn, Indiana. Hold on, let me drain the rest of this can here. I like to wring out every drop of goodness from a container of Diet Coke. Anyway, so I brought that load over to Indiana, and Auburn, Indiana is kind of an interesting place because it's the home of the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum. Now, it's kind of funny, but when I was a kid, I grew up in a small town in Western New York, and there was this farmer. I think he was a farmer, maybe just kind of lived out in the apple orchards, but he and his wife owned a Duesenberg. Now this is in the 70s, but this car, even when I was a kid, I was like, man, that car is something special, right? And it was always garaged, of course. But then when we had parades in town, like the Memorial Day Parade or the Fireman's Parade, all the people with old cars would break them out. But this Duesenberg looked like it was about a city block long. And as I grew up, I've never been like a super car guy, but I do love art, and I appreciate the artistry of design. Because I believe, like architecture is art, and there's a lot of forms of art, right? Not just like Monet painting some lilies or something. So, water lilies, that is. So it was interesting to me that in Auburn, so there were 3 car brands at the Auburn Cord Duesenberg, right, museum. And the Auburn, it was a car make, and those cars are pretty valuable. If you ever watch American Pickers, they've found some barn find Auburns in the past. Cord was a company that had like some sporty cars, named after a guy named Cord. That was his last name. And Duesenbergs were named after the Duesenberg family. There were 2 brothers, August and I can't remember the other guy. I think they both, one of them went by Tim, the other one went by Timmy. But the Duesenbergs actually started out their company building race cars. And one of their drivers, and they raced these cars at Indianapolis. Because even back in like the 19-teens, Indianapolis was a big deal in terms of motor racing. And the Duesenbergs had a car in, I think it was 1914, that Eddie Rickenbacker drove. And if you've heard the name Rickenbacker, it might be because there's an airport in Columbus, Ohio, where FedEx is, their operations there are based out of Rickenbacker Airport. But Eddie Rickenbacker ended up being I think he was the first U.S. Fighter pilot ace, and that happened during World War I, but he was a big hero. But anyway, Eddie Rickenbacker drove race cars, in addition to shooting down German Fokker fighter planes, so in World War I. So anyway, but the Duesenbergs were quite successful on the racetrack. Their cars won the Indy 500 4 times in the 1920s, and they also won the French Grand Prix, I think in 1921 maybe. But let me throw up a couple of pictures of these things, because then they kind of transition to building these cars. But here's the interesting thing. Back then, especially in the high-end luxury car market, the manufacturer would typically just build the chassis and the engine. And the Duesenbergs were the innovators of the straight 8 engine, right? 8 cylinders in line. And then they would typically, the actual body of the car would be turned over to a company that would be maybe referred to as a coachworks. Now, they had their own designers, but some people would buy their chassis and engines and have somebody else design it. But take a look at a couple of these, and I think these are both Model J's that I've put up. But anyway, just magnificent cars, and they have a museum there in Auburn. I haven't been to it, but even if you have just a passing interest in cars, it's amazing to see what people in this country produced. And at the time, the Duesenberg was the competition for the best cars in the world. Like, it was, people have called it the Rolls-Royce of America, and maybe the Rolls-Royce was the Duesenberg of Britain. I don't know, but if you've ever seen one of these cars up close, they're, like I said, the word that comes to mind is just magnificent. But unfortunately, the Great Depression came at the end of the 20s, 1929. And the market kind of dried up because a lot of rich people lost their fortunes. The only people that seemed to really have the money to continue to buy their vehicles were like actors in Hollywood. So Gary Cooper owned one. By the way, the one that Gary Cooper owned sold, I think, in 2018 for like $22 million. Other big name actors, and I can't even think the guy's name. He was in Gone with the Wind. Clark Gable owned one. Some other famous people owned these cars, but even back in the day, they were very expensive. We're talking like $14,000 to $20,000 during the Depression. So it was a big ask. But anyway, that's in Auburn, Indiana. All three of those. And by the way, after the Duesenbergs, they moved the company around, and it eventually did. They started in Minneapolis, or St. Paul, but it eventually ended up in Auburn, Indiana, because I told you the guy that started Cord was a guy named Cord, and he bought the company. And there have been several attempts to revive it over the years. The funny thing is that now with some of the brands that are out there, like the Bugattis and some of these supercars, I mean, I could see a Duesenberg revival only because Duesenberg has the pedigree. Obviously, we're far removed from it, but man, they were just insane. So I wanted to talk about home time, but I also wanted to talk about some weirdness that I sense here in Manuka. So last night, and for those of you who know me and know me well, you know I have a little bit of ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, and I'm not joking about that. It seems weird that a guy that was career military would be kind of defiant towards authority, but that is me. Lyle, by the way, Lyle at No Hippie Trucking and Transportation, he called me touchy one time. No one's ever called me that before. I don't even know if I'm kind of touchy about being called touchy. I don't like that. I'd rather be called an asshole than called touchy. But by the way, I FaceTime with Lyle because he's been out for a while, man. And he's even talked about the length of his hair, but I FaceTimed with him the other day. I took a screenshot. Take a look. Yeah, man, Lyle needs to get in a barber shop or something. But anyway, so I pull into Manuka, and this guy, you know, right out of the gate, this guy starts playing 20 questions with me at the gate, you know? And I pull in. Now, I'm driving a truck that says Prime all over it. I got a big-ass white trailer that says Prime all over it. And the first question this guy asked me is, what are you here for? I'm like, it's a terminal? Like, what the fuck would I be here for? It's a Prime terminal. Why, you know? And then he's like, well, does the trailer need service? Or does your truck need service? I'm like, no. Well, are you loaded or empty? Empty. Well, what are you doing? I said, I was just going to come in here and park. You know, because the truck stop down the street is filled up. But it was just weird. He was like, do you need anything? I'm like, no. I just want to go in. I'm going to drop this trailer and go grocery shopping. And, you know, but I was like, dude, just let me in the fucking gate, you know? Like, if I got something I need, I'll figure out who to ask, right? I don't know why there's 20 questions. And also, I don't know why these guys got to stop you and ask you your truck number, ask you, like, they can't even, the guy, legit, I was bobtail, he's like, you're bobtail, right? Like, he's looking out the window, and they're writing, you know, your numbers. Why don't they just put the sensors that check, you know, vehicle numbers, vehicle IDs like they have in, you know, in Springfield. Heck, when I was at GP Transco, there was nobody at the gate. It sensed your truck because it had the technology, then it opened the gate for you. You drove in, nobody bothered you. They don't care why you're there. It's their truck, you're at their terminal. Why wouldn't they let you in? Why they want to quiz you? And then just a second ago, I went inside and I was looking around because most of the times I've ever come here has been at night, and some of the places have been you know, doors have been closed or lights have been off. So I went to the end of the hallway to look just to see what was on the front side of the building. And I turned around and there's this dude there. I don't even know who he was. I'm very sure he wasn't a driver. He's like, you looking for somebody? I'm like, no. Like, I like to familiarize myself with buildings that I go in. So if there's a fire, a workplace shooting, you know, pestilence, a swarm of locusts, or whatever it is, I know how to get out of the place, right? I don't think that's weird. I think it's paranoid, but it's not weird. And I just, you know, that's how I roll. I'm just safety conscious that way. So anyway, I'm just getting a weird vibe. It's like, yeah, I'm a driver with this company, and you know, I'm just gonna kind of do my thing, and I got this figured out. So let's talk about home time. So I was thinking, you know, home time is really, I think it's more important than people realize. And I'm not saying that because I'm some kind of savant here. I actually have to think about it myself. And one of the things that bugs me about this home time I just came off of is I really don't feel like I was very productive when I was at home, because I'd been gone for a long time, and I didn't just lay around. I did stuff. I you know, saw family members. In fact, I saw all 6 of my kids while I was home, which is kind of unusual because sometimes, almost invariably, somebody can't get together or they're doing something. My son Joe was driving a lot of times. Excuse me. But I did see everybody while I was home. My daughter had a play, so I went to both performances of that. And I did get some stuff done. Got my wife's car taken care of, got some tires on that. But there were a lot of things I didn't get done. And I was thinking, you know, home time is important for drivers, and it's important to take home time, even if you don't feel you need it. Because I realized I stayed out longer than I wanted. I was not as helpful to my family as I could have been. In part, I was staying out because I was trying to like make arrangements for trainees and stuff, and it didn't work out. And also, I mean, I got a slow start to the year. You guys know what happened in January with I had 2 breakdowns. One was not serious at all, but one slowed me down for about 5 days. And I think I mentioned it earlier. I think I netted between 23 and 24,000 for the quarter, the Q1. It's not horrible, but typically I would like to be netting more than 7,000 to 8,000 a month. So that was that was part of my thinking. And then some things got pushed back and shifted around. So it was one of those home times where I didn't really maximize my use of time. And I'm not saying you gotta go home and just immediately start turning wrenches or roofing the house or doing this or doing that. But go home and put some stuff on your plate. If you're married or you have a significant other, you have kids, it's time to dedicate some time to being with them and helping them, and doing stuff that you would do if you weren't on the road. And since you have all day off every day, usually, there are probably things your family would like you to do with them. Like we went to the National Zoo on the day after Easter. But just kind of being there. But also it's a time for you, sorry, my empty can was starting to blow around. It's a time for you to really get your batteries recharged. And here's another phenomenon of home time, and I always tell this to my trainees, but there used to be a saying that you didn't want to buy a car that was made on a Monday or a Friday. And the thinking was that on Monday, all these assembly line workers had just come back from the weekend and their head wasn't in the game. And the thinking on Friday was their mind was already out the door. They were just phoning it in on Fridays because they wanted to get to the weekend. Now, I don't know how much of that's true, but there is something to be said for that theory, right? And what I've told trainees is a lot of times when you're getting ready to go on home time and when you've just come off a home time, I feel like those are times when you're very susceptible to mistakes. And you get back in the truck and it's like, yeah, it feels comfortable, but you've been driving a car for 5 days, 10 days, whatever. I've been driving my wife's SUV around town, running errands, but you get back in the truck and I know this, right? I'm verbalizing it to you, and I've said this to other people. But guess what I did? The first place I picked up, man, I almost did a really stupid maneuver. And I mentioned I picked up in Selinsgrove, PA, and everybody knows there's it's national beef there. And that parking lot is really, really tight. But guess what? I didn't have any problems in the parking lot because I was like putting along, 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour. It's just really tight if you've never been there. And I bobtailed in there because my last load before I went home, I dropped at Selinsgrove. So they said, you can just bobtail back because you were up a trailer, essentially. Because I dropped off there and bobtailed home. So I bobtail in, I hook the trailer, and I go up to the gate, and when I pull out, you're supposed to make a right-hand turn, and the driveway widens on the right-hand side. They've built like a retaining wall that kind of goes off at like a 45-degree angle to the road. So I wanted to get out of the way, but I still needed to stop, and I don't know if I was doing my live loaded call or what I was fiddling around with. But so I pulled myself up right by that wall. Well, when I go to pull out, I realize that the very back of the trailer is not yet kind of around where that wall starts. So I catch myself, because at first I was just like, yep, I'm just gonna get on the road, make some money. I catch myself, I look in my mirror, and I'm like, damn, I am gonna scrape the side of the trailer on that wall if I'm not careful. So I turn to the left, and then I start to go out onto the street there. But the street, if you know that area, right? It's narrow, it's 2 lanes, and it's pretty busy. The name of it is Old Trail. It's pretty busy. And you can only, they only want you making a right because it's just tight. And the reason that they cut that wall, they cut that wall in and basically made that 45 was so you could go out straight and then get out, crank it around to the right, and then get your trailer in the right lane, right? So you didn't take up a bunch of space. But because I had pulled over to be by the wall, I didn't have that luxury of having that swing area for my trailer. So I start to pull out, but then there's some oncoming traffic, and like a total rookie, I'm like, oh snap, I got to get out of these people's way. So I start to turn to get out of their way, and then I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm too freaking close to that wall. So then I stop, which is always a good plan. Like, if you're in a pickle, stop. Because, while there is a bunch of traffic, and it was like, 5 o'clock in the evening too. If you're in a pickle, just stop, okay? Don't wreck trying to get out of somebody's way. So I stopped and I waited to see what these cars were gonna do, because I was like, okay, if you just want to keep going, then go. I'm just gonna wait right here. Now I know I'm impeding traffic. I know I could get a ticket for it, but I'd rather do that than wreck a trailer. And so I stop. I see that the cars that are coming towards me are stopping. I check, the cars that are coming from my left side, right, in my lane, they're stopping. So because and even the lady that stopped realized that I needed to swing this around. So she stopped far enough back, and then I was able to slowly go out of there, go all the way across both lanes, actually over onto the little bit on the gravel, and then swing it around, not wreck. Nobody got hurt. I waved to the people to thank them. I waved to people anyway. But I appreciated that everybody just kind of realized, okay, this rookie truck driver's got himself in a pickle. Let's just stop and let him figure it out. But that's kind of like, that's not, I don't think that's anomalous, right? I think we get back on the road after home time, and we just kind of, our minds are not exactly where they need to be. But I want to encourage everybody to take home time, to use home time for their advantage, right? Now, if you go home and, things are not going well, I don't ever want to depart some meeting with a person on a sour note. I say I don't ever. I mean, sometimes I just don't give a crap because it's somebody I don't know and don't care about. But if you're talking about a loved one, a friend, whatever, you don't want to leave on bad terms, right? You don't want to leave on a sour note. Take the time to make sure that things are okay. And kind of prep everybody for the fact that you're leaving. If you have little kids, right? When you come home, right, like time kind of, it's like a dog, right? You come home, right? It's like Jim Gaffigan says, you go out, you forgot your keys, you come back in the house, the dog greets you like you came back from war. But everybody has to, like, now you came home, there's this euphoria, everybody's happy to see you, but now they know, you know, you got to ramp up for leaving. So like the day before, get your truck ready. I do little stuff that's like almost like a cue for me and my family that my time at home is coming to an end. One of the things I do is I go out and I power up my truck, right? Because one time, I don't know what I did, but I go out there to leave and my truck wouldn't start. And I had to jump it with my wife's, you know, Toyota SUV. Although I will say shortly after that, I had to get new batteries, but anyway, you know, I just want to make sure everything's good to go. Maybe I clean the windows. Like my truck was totally covered with pollen when I was at home because I park under a tree. But it's clean now because I was in a hellacious thunderstorm last night here in Illinois. But anyway, you know, clean things up. One of the things I needed to do was get grease on my skid plate. So I had gone to the local auto parts store, got some Lucas grease, the red and tacky. So you don't need that, like they brand a skid plate grease, you know, fifth wheel grease. But if you just go to like any auto parts store and get like that Lucas red and tacky, and you don't even need a grease gun, man. I just pop the end off that, start squeezing it with my iron grip, and squeezed it out, and I got a plastic knife and just spread it around on my fifth wheel, and yeah, it's working fine. So I just used the whole tube on that, and it wasn't that expensive. A lot of times if you buy that, don't buy, if there's something you can get at a place other than a truck stop, like an auto parts store, go there and buy it, because you're always going to save money. Same with windshield wipers. Don't buy unless it's an emergency. Don't buy headlight bulbs. Don't buy windshield wipers, grease, none of that stuff at a truck stop. Sometimes you have to, but you know, go to Walmart, go to auto parts store. But anyway, use your home time to your advantage. Your home time should be a time to make you a better driver. When you come back out, you should be a better driver. I got back out on Monday, and I did pick up, like I said, late. And I drove, and I was like, dang, I'm tired. Because, you know, you got to get back into that sleep schedule. So, but it's getting towards summer. I got some plans for the summer, so I'll be taking more home time. I'm hoping that the winter is mostly over. I'm pretty sure it is. But, you know, there's a saying that April is the cruelest month, so you never know. So, just by way of update, I got a load that's supposed to pick up at Tyson's in Waterloo, Iowa. I got family up in Waterloo, so I I'll just see what the schedule looks like. But yeah, so the window opened at midnight today. It's like, so 14 hours ago, but the window doesn't close because it's Tyson. The window doesn't close until, let me see, 9:06 tomorrow morning. So I called just a little bit ago. My wife called me. She's like, did you get your load yet? I'm like, no. She goes, well, aren't you, isn't it time to pick it up? I said, well, I'm in the window. But I called, and the first thing out of the guy, and by the way, I hate when people do this. I said, is the load ready, right? He doesn't answer my question. And I'm like, Your Honor, could you ask the witness to answer the question? I said, is this load ready? He's like, well, they have until 9:06 tomorrow morning for it to be ready. Oh, I didn't ask you what time it was supposed to be ready. I asked you if it is ready. And he says that, and then he's talking to somebody else. And so finally I was like, so it's not ready, right? He's like, yeah. But they have until, I'm like, got it. I mean, it's like, dude, just tell me, is the load ready or not? I don't care what your little computer says or the paperwork says. Just, is it ready or not? Is it in the trailer and the doors closed up and the reefer on? That's all I care about. And this load is actually going to Miami, FLA. So I'll see if Holly's back down there. Don't really love going to Florida at all. But it actually pays this load pays quite well. I don't have the exact figures, but the load from Waterloo to Miami pays almost 5,000 bucks. So, you know, I realize that I'll probably get some low paying load out of there, or maybe I'll get a flower load. I've never had a flower. You know, and maybe I'll get a plant load. It's about that time of the year. So maybe I'll get a load of plants that'll be lucrative and it'll keep me busy. Who knows? But we'll see. Hopefully I don't have to go to Bradenton. Because the last time I went there, the only time I went there, I had a live load. I had a live load in a place where there were like 30 preloaded Prime trailers. I was like, what? Why do you guys hate me? But anyway, I'll update you, and we'll talk soon. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, actually. So thanks for tuning in. Bye.